Task number 6. This one is for children of Greg and Christine Thackeray. All children of Greg and Christine Thackeray must tell a story that happened with at least 2 or more other children in the event. Story with least number of corrections wins. Go.
Okay, here is my story. When we lived in Minnesota, Cameron had a friend on the bus. I believe her name was Emily. And she told Cameron that her cat had had kittens. And so Cameron came in and told us, my friend's cat is having kittens, and she lived also in Stockton, kind of walkable distance from our house. And so it was me and Cameron and Sarah and William. And I really wanted a new kitten. And so we told Mom, we're going to go get a kitten. And she said, no. And I said, well, then we'll just walk and go get it. Like, you don't have to drive us, we'll walk. And so I got a wagon, and William and Sarah were supposed to stay in the wagon, and me and Cameron walked. And we walked down our street, and then we turned, and then there was like that really busy highway that all those semi-trucks would just blast through in Stockton. And we started walking along the highway, and there's no sidewalk, we're just on the edge of the road. And we're like in the middle of the busiest section, and William gets out of the wagon and starts running in the road. And I'm like, William, get back in the wagon. You're going to get hit by a truck. And he's just like running around, and I like can't catch him. And like semi-trucks are going past us, and he like almost died. And eventually we keep going, and we make it to Emily's house, and we pick out a kitten. I cannot remember what cat that was. Was it Kitty? Might have been Kitty, the black kitten.
Black kitten.
Yes. Was it Kitty? Because I think later Dad brought home a kitty, and that was Kitty too. But I think the original black kitty was the kitty we got from Cameron's friend Emily, and Uncle William almost died because he wouldn't listen to me.
These are a lot of details that you're not sure about.
It's fine.
That's my submission. I got it.
All right.
Okay, are you ready for my story?
Yes.
I was in elementary school. I was in the 3rd grade. Cameron was in the 5th grade. And Uncle William was in kindergarten. And Mom was going to pick us up from school. Grandma was going to come drive and pick us up from school. And Marcus had a dentist appointment. And she says she called the school and told them she would not be picking us up. But the school did not tell us not to get on the bus. So the bus went home, and this is in Minnesota in winter. So we missed the bus, and Grandma didn't show up. So Uncle Cameron had the bright idea that we could just walk home. It didn't take very long to drive to school. It only took like 10 minutes. So he's like, we can just walk home. But we lived on the other side of the mountain. You know how we have to drive over all those winding hills to get to Bentonville? We basically lived in Bentonville. And our school was here. So we all bundled up in our coats and started walking down the highway, and we got a significant distance before a cop car pulled over and pulled us 3 little kids into the back seat. And he's like, what are you doing? And we said, we're walking home. And here's the issue is I can't remember if he took us to our house or back to the school. I believe he took us back to the school and then called our parents. And my mom came, and she was
flabbergasted. She was like, why on earth would you try to walk home? And we all thought that was a perfectly reasonable thing to try and walk home in the middle of a blizzard in winter in Minnesota. But it was all Cameron's idea, and Cameron was the ringleader. He must have been in 5th grade. How old is 5th grade?
Like 12?
I would have been
Wait.
like 7 or 8. I would have been Adelaide's age.
She's second grade and turned
She's
8.
going 3rd grade, yeah. Cameron's on August
So
birthday.
3 more years. Turn 11 in 5th grade, I guess.
No, because Cameron was born late August, so he was oldest in his class. So he would have been 12.
You still turn a certain age. You still turn a certain age in a certain grade.
That's the story. The story of how Cameron, Uncle William, and I, oh my, almost died in a blizzard walking home from school, uphill both ways.
Okay, so this is for task number 6, and I think this.
Okay, George, you're not filming a TikTok. You're filming a video for YouTube. Turn your phone sideways. I've had to change every video you've made. This is episode 6. It's 1 o'clock in the morning, and I have to take the time to fix every one of your videos. Oh my goodness. Okay, now you can go back to your story. Just grab it here and pull down.
Strat here is to try to think of a story that not very many people remember. We'll see. I'm going to talk about this time when Uncle William was almost burned alive as a baby. And this happened when we lived in Missouri. And in one corner of our property, so we'd been clearing out the brush in a corner of the property. There was a corner that was this grove of cottonwood trees, and there were a bunch of like little trees around a couple big ones. So we were trying to clear out all the little trees and clear out that area so it would be more usable. And we piled all of that brush in a big pile with a bunch of the wood stacked up. We were going to have a big old bonfire. And Uncle Brian and Uncle Marcus had wanted to light the fire, and they were finally given permission to light the fire. And so they went out to get it started, and I can't remember why William, who was the baby at the time, was out there, but he had been set on the wood pile to kind of sit there, and Uncle Brian and Uncle Marcus started the fire without realizing he was there. They started on the opposite side from where he was, and when Mom saw it, when Grandma saw it, she screamed and ran down to the fire and pulled baby William off, and we all kind of freaked out for a second, and then but the fire was starting, and so in the end we had a little bit of a bonfire there, and I think we did like hot dogs and stuff around the fire because it was in the summer. We were out of school, but Uncle William was almost cooked alive on a bonfire, but he was saved in the nick of time by Grandma. So that is my story, and we'll see if anybody corrects me on it. Probably a lot of people. Who knows?
Yep.
All right, welcome to Story Time with William. My story is going to be Night Hike 2020. It's a story with Cameron, George, and myself when Cameron and I were driving out to Idaho from Mom and Dad's house living over in Hershey. And we wanted to stop by and sleep the night. We were thinking, why not go hike up hike up Scotts Bluff like we did all those years ago with Sarah and Larkin. And so Cameron checked the website. He said that he didn't see anything that said we couldn't go. George was driving. We all got in the car. We brought a little wooden sword, the little like Japanese training sword things that George had. We drove up. We parked on the side of the road out in front of the kind of gate. Decided to leave the sword in there, like in the car. We started the hike with our flashlights off, so we just walked in, which that'll become more apparent later on in the story. After hiking up, we're all kind of exhausted, George being the most exhausted and maybe almost throwing up, but we'll let George rebuttal that if he wishes. A little bit before we went through the tunnel in Scotts Bluff, where you go to the far side of the mountain, of the bluff, we saw a car start pulling up behind where George parked. And sure enough, red and blue lights started flashing back and forth. And we're like, oh no, we gotta go. And so we start hiking back down. A little bit later, a spotlight pops on and starts sweeping across the hill and like the field in front of the bluff. And so I take off running to make sure that they know that we're here and not to get any more cops involved. And eventually, George and Karen make it down the hill. We get talking. We said we didn't see anything that said the park was closed online. And the cop with his flashlight looked over at one of the signs. And it wasn't like a big sign, but it wasn't a small sign either, that said parked closed after sunset. So we were very much so in the wrong in that one. So they got our information. Cameron did not have his driver's license on him, so they had to look him up on their computer, which I don't know if we actually found him or not. But like during that process, they also noticed the wooden sword in the back seat, and they were like, "What are you planning with that thing?" And we're like, "Oh, we were thinking about taking it because like maybe we walked across a rattlesnake or something." And he's like, "It's a good thing you didn't, because those are a protected species." And we're like, "Oh no, well it's a good thing we didn't bring it." And we were wrapping up, and the last thing was that we were let off with a warning, and it was put onto George's record because he was the only local. And yeah, we got home safely, and that was Night Hike 2020.
Well, he didn't say from our childhood.
So say this, the memory that you guys have shared with me, that multiple people have shared.
What's that?
I think how much Sarah threw up Cheetos.
Sarah threw up Cheetos. Yeah, I can tell that story. That one's from long enough ago.
But Sarah, William, and you?
Yeah, that's me, Sarah, and William, yeah. So, gosh, we were living in the Prospect House in Newburgh, Oregon. That was the second Newburgh house. We were in Newburgh First Ward because we started in Newburgh Second Ward and then we moved to Newburgh First Ward. And we had a pool in the backyard on the patio. And gosh, Sarah and I and William, I think, were in the pool swimming on like a weekend, or maybe it was during the summer. So it could have been a weekday during the summer. And Sarah had stayed the night somewhere, like had done a sleepover or something the night before. And she had eaten, I guess, a big bag of Cheetos on her sleepover. And as we were playing in the pool, she swallowed some water or inhaled some water or something. And that made her start to like cough and gag up the water in her throat. And she threw up over the side of the pool. And rather than being concerned about her health, I noticed the color of her barf was bright orange, the color of Cheetos, and I said, "Where'd you get the Cheetos?" Because I was jealous. I liked Cheetos, and she thought that was quite funny, I think. So that's the "Where'd you get the Cheetos" story about when Sarah barfed over the side of our pool. That's a good one. It's a good story. I mean, like, part of me, there's so many stories I could tell. I'll tell one more bonus story. This can get cut. This one is not from that long ago. Like, I want to tell the story of Night Hike 2020, and Night Hike, the original Night Hike. When we were living in Nebraska, Larkin, William, and I climbed to the top of Scotts Bluff.
That's not enough siblings, though, right? Thackeray siblings to correct it. Sorry, Larkin.
It's true. Well, I'm going to tell that story anyway, because there's Night Hike 2020. That's the sequel story. So, we're just going to tell it quickly. So, William and Larkin and I walked up Scotts Bluff at night, and there's this section of the bluff where you go through this tunnel, and you come out on the side of the bluff facing the town, and it was a beautiful view at night because you could see all the lights, and it's like the only tall thing for a long distance, so you can see very far. It's a very beautiful sight. So when William and I were moving back to Idaho from Pennsylvania, we stayed the night with George, and we wanted to recreate this event because it was so cool. And we convinced George to do it, and that it'd be fine. And dang it, we convinced George to do it, and it'd be fine. And then we went to the park, and it was closed after dark, so we did it anyway. And then we were like, "It's fine, George." So then we were hiking at night, and you're not supposed to hike at night. And I'm trying to remember if we walked from the house. I think we may have just walked from the house the first time because we lived close enough to the bluff. But the second time we parked on the side of the road, and someone called the cops on us, and we were pretty far up the hike. We were pretty far up the hike when we saw a car drive past where George's car was parked, and then drive past again, driving kind of slow. And then we saw the cop cars pull up, and we're like, "Oh no, they're probably going to tow your car." Like, someone called the cops on us. So we tried to run back to the car, but we weren't that in shape. And I think George almost threw up because he overexerted himself on this hike. And then we got down to the car, and we had to talk to the cops and explain to them that it was an accident and we didn't mean any harm. And he said, "Didn't you see the sign that said it's closed after dark?" And I said, "No, I didn't see the sign because it was too dark to read it." And then I didn't have my ID on me, so he had to look me up. And we were fine. We ended up being fine, but we had to kind of talk our way out of the cops. And we got a warning, and then we went, and then we didn't, and we did not ever finish Night Hike 2020. But we said Night Hike 2020 a lot when we were doing it, and that was a fun Night Hike 2020 story. What's another story?
I think you're only supposed to do one.
Wrong way. Okay, so it's time for my family story. So the story I want to tell is the hot fudge fiasco. This was a Missouri story. And if I remember correctly, Mom was making something with hot fudge in it. I would assume something with ice cream, but I cannot remember in the story. But I do remember that baby William, toddler William, he was really little, was on the island, and Mom was microwaving hot fudge. So she microwaved it, She set it on the counter, and then she went to go work on something else. And William, being the little kid and seeing the hot fudge, stuck his finger in the hot fudge, and it was hot, so he knocked it over and was flinging his finger around and got a big glob of hot fudge on the island. And Mom freaked out and picked up William and ran him over to the sink and started running his finger under hot water to wash off the hot fudge. Well, after this happened, the commotion alerted someone else in the household. And if I remember correctly, I believe it was George, but it could have been someone else. But in my mind, it's George. He comes in, sees Mom with William at the sink. He's like, that's interesting. And then sees a glob of hot fudge on the island. So he does what anyone would and goes to grab some of that hot fudge, which is fresh out of the microwave and still boiling hot. So he sticks his finger with it and then starts screaming. And I think he starts shaking his finger. And in that commotion, he runs off, and I believe he goes to the sink or something, like gets a rag to wipe off his hand. I believe Anna walked in. It may have been Sarah. Once again, long time ago. Walked in afterwards, sees two people off in the way and me watching, looks down and sees hot fudge on the island and goes, "Ooh, I could go for some hot fudge." And I distinctly remember a third person reaching down, putting their finger in the hot fudge and burning their finger in it as well. And to this day, I think that was one of the funniest memories that I have of our family and hot fudge. I am ready to be ripped apart, but I think that it is long enough ago that it'll be hard to argue facts. Anyways, this is my TED Talk, and thank you for listening.